This is Shawn Wells. You might remember him last year. He was on the show talking about some of the biohacks and things and who he is as a food scientist and all the things. But Shawn, congratulations, has a brand new book called The Energy Formula. So I call this, Shawn, this is a really great book, by the way. As a 9-time author, I'm always impressed when I see people put in the effort, because I know what it takes to write a book, to make a damn good book. And this is such a good book. Guys, go to the link that I have down there, or if you're listening on the podcast, go to Amazon, get this book if you're even remotely interested in your health. And if you're listening to my show, you're remotely at least interested in your health. Because there's so many things in here that I definitely want to talk about here today. But welcome back, Shawn.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Jimmy. And I love the Cowboys shirt. Way to rep.
Well, lifelong Cowboys fan. Gotta represent. So
yeah.
But yeah, you wrote what I think is the Biohacking Bible. I know other people have written books that talk about biohacking, but I've never seen it in the way that you presented it. Can you talk about why you felt like all the concepts you put in this book were so necessary in one book?
Oh, man. And thank you for calling it Biohacking Bible. I've actually had several people tell me I should retitle it to Biohacking Bible.
You really should. Yes.
But the whole energy formula thing is an acronym that me and my team came up with, and it stands for experiment, nutrition, exercise, routines, growth, and your tribe.
Yes.
And so that together makes up the energy formula. And yes, it's biohacking, but one of the things I was trying to do is be more mainstream than potentially biohacking. I'm glad that the biohacking and keto community loves it, that I've been in for a long time.
Yeah.
But I also wanted this to be a book that someone like my mom could pick up and like. And I know, like, I'm good friends with Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield and some of these guys, but their stuff is very hardcore, like not very accessible with, injections and enemas and, hanging upside down and,
The one where they put that purple or blue stuff in their mouth. I don't even know what.
Methylene blue. Yeah. Yeah, methylene blue. Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to make something that is accessible for everyone. And I also make it about not overwhelming anyone. I want it to be something that I'm meeting you where you're at. Because I used to work in hospitals and nursing homes, and I want people to have the ability to really make lifestyle changes and to not feel like, 1, this is too expensive, 2, this is too overwhelming, 3, it's too technical. Like I didn't want any of that kind of stuff in here. So that's why I break it down like all throughout the book. Like I tell you the brands I would use, and I don't get paid on anything in the book.
Yes.
And the book. Yeah, by like 20 cents or something for the hardcover. But yeah. So I wanted it to be really simple, really clean, hopefully that people could adopt and make great changes. But if you're a biohacking or keto fan, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of things in there. I have probably 60 full color diagrams. I have the surveys in every chapter where you can assess like your baseline status and your improvement. I have the chapter summaries. I have formulators corners that go through all of the supplements. Yep, there they are. And I have the resource hacks that goes through like the devices, the apps, the tips, the techniques. I mean, and then there's those diagrams, like, and everything is in full color. Every page, whether it's the ebook or hardcover. And then I have an Audible version that's my voice as well, that's unabridged.
I remember the day you were recording, you and I talked on the phone that day, and you're like, I got to get back to recording. I'm like, I hope you're taking lots of breaks so your energy is up. I haven't heard the audiobook yet. I need to get a copy, but mad respect, you read your own book, because what is this, 300 pages? 200? Yeah, almost 300 pages. So that's probably about 9.5 hours, 10 hours worth of audio. Yeah, that's That's exhausting, guys, if you've never read an audiobook before.
And it probably took close to, I don't know, 30 plus hours to do or something. It was a lot. It was very hard.
Took a long extended weekend in a recording studio and did it. Yeah, mad respect, because when I did Keto Clarity, I took a week. I was just like, I'm going to need enough mental breaks because it drains you. Like, speaking of energy, you needed an energy formula for reading reading the book.
So hard. Yeah, exactly.
But man, this is almost, I know biohacking kind of is a pejorative almost at this point. So it's almost life hacking, because I think my favorite part of your work isn't so much all the things directly related to health, like fasting, which we talked about the last time you were here, or some of the other things. It's the connections with people. And I love the is it the Y in there that stands for the connections?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like that's what's missing in so many people's health journey is they focus so intently on the diet, so intently probably on the movement, maybe a little lip service to sleep and stress, but they don't pay attention to all these other things. And you lay it all out. Like, if anybody's like, I don't know what's wrong with me, this is your guide to maybe get some clues.
Exactly. And yeah, like I love that the book actually goes in a flow from like the most technical. It starts with like experiment, which is bioindividuality, biohacking, genetic testing, blood work, all of these things, understanding that you're different from other people and how important that is to assess that a study based on a supplement is not predictive of like it's going to work for you.
Right.
Those are averages, and they're not necessarily going to apply to you. And so that's something that we get into an experiment, then go into nutrition, where I cover keto, paleo, Mediterranean, vegan, carnivore, all these things, and even get into like executional stuff, like with, targeted and cyclical and all the things you know so well. Then get into exercise with high intensity interval training versus low intensity steady state, doing hacks like intraset stretching, blood flow restriction, some of these really cool techniques that science coming out with.
Ben Bigman just did a study where before they had them fast, they did a brief 30-minute exercise session just to see what impact it would have on BHB levels. And they saw a huge boost in BHB over the 36-hour fast versus not doing that 30-minute fast. So it kind of laid the groundwork for fasted workouts having this extra benefit. It was kind of cool. Did you see that?
No, I didn't, but it makes complete sense to me that like it's glycogen depletion is going to push up ketones, and it's also going to push up like the MCT transport of utilization of BHB as a fuel. So yeah, that's awesome. That totally makes sense, and it's something that I actually talk about. And then getting into routines. So that's going to be circadian rhythm, the sleep-wake cycle, morning routines, what that looks like. Almost all successful people have two things in common. They're expert reframers. They're really resilient-minded. And then they also have a great morning routine. And then get into sleep hygiene and creating a sleep fortress, protecting your bedroom, making it a place of relaxation, and what that looks like. And then what I like is the book, like it keeps transitioning from like give them what they want and then, finish with what they need.
Right.
And so like it gets into growth mindset, which is stoicism, which is that resilient mind. I also cover fasting in that chapter, nootropics, these brain boosting ingredients. And then the last chapter, and I feel like the most important chapter, is your tribe.
Yeah.
And that's where I talk about the connection, the purpose in your life, living your why. Who are the people that are around you? And we've seen in the Harvard study, the most robust study of all time, that's out 80 years in now, that the number one predictor of longevity is quality of relationships. And we also see with the data from the blue zones that yes, red wine and Mediterranean food and all that's great, and exercise, but it's really their quality of connections. They slow down,
Yeah.
they are present, they're mindful, they have 3-hour meals with 10 people. It is good food, but part of it is that red wine, that food is psychosomatically anchored to parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
Meaning that when they sip that red wine, when they eat that whole food that's so great, yes, it's good and nourishing, but it matters the environment it's in.
Yes.
And that gets reinforced over time so that they believe that they are safe, that they are nurtured, that they're in a healthy environment, and therefore that food can be used better. It's so different. And we could be in the opposite situation where we could be eating healthy food even in the West. But if we're racing in our car, we're at the vending machine, we're overwhelmed at work, we're alone and watching Game of Thrones, whatever it is, it can actually psychosomatically anchor stress and inflammation.
Yes. Yeah, you recently were on a trip. I follow all your friends. It's kind of cool, like Stephanie Foster, who's been on the show in the recent past, and other people. And it was cool. You guys look like was it Sonoma where you guys were?
Mm-hmm.
And you really,
Sedona.
Oh, Sedona. Sorry, I'm an East Coaster. We don't know all those places out there. But yes, Sedona, sorry. And it's beautiful. And you were in beautiful setting with beautiful food and wine and friends you cared about and loved ones. It's a embodiment of everything you were just describing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so beautiful to travel to these new places too. I think it's important. It's something I talk about in growth is that neuroplasticity in challenging yourself to take on new tasks. As we get older, we get smarter and we get dumber. We get smarter in terms of crystallized intelligence.
Right.
And that means we get better and better at making a smaller and smaller box. We get better and better at the shortcut to work. We get better and better at our routine in the morning. But we get worse at fluid or dynamic intelligence where we take on new tasks. And that's why a young kid can learn a language or, learn a music instrument easier than us. They have more what's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And so when you challenge yourself by going to new places, by trying a new language, by even just stuff like putting your belt on the opposite way, putting your pants on the different way, brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, all of these things are going to help you stay more neuroplastic.
Yes. Is this the whole concept of set in your ways is kind of hardwired in us as we keep getting older? I resist that hard, Shawn, even naturally, instinctively. I try not to do the same things. It's easy to fall into, it's good to have habits like you were talking the morning routine, but to get so set in a habit that it becomes the only, not anything outside, don't draw outside the line, so to speak. It's kind of like we start that way early in life and we're taught don't draw outside the lines, but then we do, and then we go back to that towards the end part of life.
Yeah, it's the idea that neurons that fire together wire together. And the whole idea of increasing BDNF, which is, by the way, how these psychedelics work,
yes,
is by increasing BDNF. The idea is, like Michael Pollan talks about, is that you're throwing essentially like snow over the trail. We've skied down this trail so many times, you're throwing fresh powder over the trail so that you can create a new trail. And that's what's powerful. But there's obviously other ways to increase BDNF too. And those would be some of these supplements I talk about, like polyphenols in particular. And those come from great foods. We find that these powerful anti-aging polyphenols are in some of the most historic healthy foods. If you look at catechins in cacao, EGCG in green tea, transresveratrol in red wine, pterostilbene in blueberries, quercetin in apples and onions, fisetin in strawberries. You just go down the line and there's powerful compounds that are anti-aging and chlorogenic acid in coffee. These things like improve your neuroplasticity and also activate the sirtuin genes associated with toughness, resilience, and anti-aging.
Hey guys, you know I'm all about healthy nutrition, and I have a brand new product I want to tell you about called Athletic Greens. This is not just a multivitamin. It has 75 essential elements that you want to have in your diet, from probiotics to greens to digestive enzymes to prebiotics. There's so many things that they pack into the Athletic Greens. The main reason why I love them is it puts it all in one place. Like literally you'd have to a la carte buy all of these different supplements, and they do it all in one package. So if you go to athleticgreens.com/Jimmy, and you can get a special discount if you go there, and the discount is you get a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D as well as some of their travel packs. Go check it out, you guys. athleticgreens.com/Jimmy. By the way, guys, go check out Shawn over on Instagram. He's Shawn Wells. It makes it very easy to find you now. What was your old moniker? It was biohacking something?
It was, I had Zone Halo, and then I had Ingredientologist.
Ingredientologist. That's what you were last time you were on the show. And then I'm like, dude, finally figured out. Just brand Shawn Wells. Nobody else is getting Shawn. I was actually surprised. That's a common name.
Yeah. I was lucky to get it. So yeah, I'm blessed to have it.
When I looked up Jimmy Moore, it's an opera singer. If you Google Jimmy Moore, the first thing you do, if you click on like jimmymore.com, this guy's like, oh, and I was like, okay, that's not me. I can sing like that, but it's not me.
We'll start singing, Jimmy.
There you go. Hey, dude, I'm a karaoke king. Everybody that knows me from cruises, low carb cruises, know I'm the karaoke king. So, but NAD. Let's go back to the experiment part, because I hear a lot about NAD, but a lot of people don't know about it. So, give us a bit of a primer about it.
So NAD is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and if you remember the Krebs cycle, which is also called the citric acid cycle, that's that energy crank that's in the mitochondria that produces ATP, the energy currency in the body.
Yeah.
And we remember that mitochondria are kind of like the heart is to the body, is what mitochondria is to the cell, or an engine to a car, if you will. And so NAD is the gasoline to that engine of that car, so that it can make energy, which means so that it can get that car going down the road. And so NAD becomes so critical for our cellular health, for our energy, that it's really become a massive focus in research, in anti-aging, in energy, in health. And so we're seeing that NAD has become just absolutely important. And so that's why we're seeing NAD IVs, we're seeing NAD intranasal, NAD boosting supplements like NMN and True Niagen NR. We're seeing patches where, it's become a really big deal to find ways to boost NAD. Yeah. But some of the easiest ways are going to be cutting out sugar, doing exercise, especially high intensity interval training, doing fasting. These are some ways that it's very easy to do. One of the most interesting ones that I've found out recently from a study, and this makes sense because of the nicotinamide part, is taking niacin, the full flesh niacin, which I know is kind of uncomfortable for some people. And, you kind of feel, you look sunburned maybe for a half hour, you feel paresthesis, that burning and tingling.
What is that, by the way, when you get that flushing and red? Is it kind of releasing inflammasomes in the body? What is that?
It has to do with blood flow. It's one, bringing blood flow to the surface, like superficially, but two, it's also triggering some of the nerve endings in that area. So it can feel awkward if you're not used to it. Some people literally feel like they're having a heart attack or go to the hospital. Yeah, so they do make no flesh niacin, but the full flesh niacin is the one that really has the benefits when it comes to cholesterol, when it comes to NAD. But this new study like blew me away that niacin itself actually smokes, from what I'm seeing, NMN or NR.
Wow.
Niacin, and again, it's not the most comfortable thing, but you adapt to it over time and you can titrate it up. You could start with like 100 milligrams of niacin and work up to 500.
Yeah.
And it increased NAD levels 8x in human participants. So this is a huge deal when it comes to anti-aging, when it comes to cellular energy, which means full body energy. And yeah, this is a really big deal.
I love that you talk about get through it. Like, you know, it's going to be bad, get through it. And then in your nutrition section, the N, you talk about kind of getting through some of the keto flu, because so many people, Shawn, start things like niacin, full flush niacin, or they start a ketogenic diet and they have the uncomfortability early, which doesn't let them stay on it long enough to get the benefits. And so mitigating the pain, and even on fasting, same thing. Day 2 is a bear. Oh, so you mitigate some of those things. And you talk about that, by the way, in here, how to mitigate some of those problems that happen. We're just creatures of not liking pain in any form at any time.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting? It seems like counterintuitive ideas. Like, yes, we should seek ease to avoid dis-ease. When we're chronically in states of not ease, we're in states of dis-ease.
Right.
So it is problematic if you're overstressed, if you're overwhelmed. And I talk about in the book the idea of allostatic load, that bucket, that stress bucket, and it can overflow. Things that are even good stresses, hormetic stresses, like fasting, like keto, like red light, like cold plunges, that normally are U stresses, EU stress, like a positive stressor, it can become a distress when your bucket is overflowing. And what's happened is we've become easier to kill. We become weaker because we don't have the resilience we once have. We don't have the bucket anymore that's the size that it used to be to deal with stress like we once could. So now that our bucket is smaller because we're, temperature controlled, because we're at 68 to 72 degrees all day, every day, because we're eating every hour or two, because we're, not doing cold showers or cold plunges, because we're, not as resilient mentally because we're distracted with our cell phones. Our bucket is very small now. And now it's very easy for us to just go into full distress and it to be dis-ease because we don't have the giant buckets we once had where we were resilient. Yep. But there is an important aspect of that to note, is that while we should seek ease overall, like long term, yes, but we need periods of dis-ease, not chronic dis-ease, but periods of dis-ease,
I like that,
or hormesis, so that we can keep leveling up our ability to have ease when we want it.
Guys, I hope you're hearing this. This hormetic effect is a thing. Stress is not bad. Overly chronically stressed over a long period of time is. Acutely stressed, to get that hormetic effect, makes you stronger in the long term.
100%.
Or bulletproof and all the things.
100%.
So, you mentioned the cold one, cold therapy and cold exposure, and that's in your exercise, the E in the energy. So talk about cold, and I know it's been out there, and you see people doing the dips all the time. I got a bathtub in there that I pop my big old body in there, and we get beneath. I try to get low enough to get the vagus nerve under the water, and I love after that initial it's awesome. Like, I actually get warm after about 5 minutes. I feel like I'm in a sea of fire.
Yeah, so that's your blood flow coming in from the peripheral, like from your arms, and going into your core to protect the organs, etc., the most essential body parts. And the blood is like literally just coming in, and you feel that warmth. And it's incredible. I agree. Like, most people think that you'll just be sitting there just freezing cold for however long you're in there. But like over a couple minutes, like that happens to me as well, that I actually feel warm. And it's an incredible feeling. It's an enlivening feeling. It's a rush. I just did it, right before our podcast. I go from like a hot shower to as cold a shower as I can go at the end, and it just wakes me up. And like you talked about, I definitely like to get the vagus nerve, like to get my full head. There's something called the dive reflex that makes it even better. So absolutely, huge fan of cold thermogenesis. What happens is your body will upregulate the basal metabolic rate because it's cold and it's trying to maintain homeostasis. It's trying to put you in a state of ease when you're putting it in a state of dis-ease. So your body is doing everything it can in that moment to protect the organs, to increase alertness, to keep your body at a stable temperature, especially the core. But it's also doing some things with brown adipose tissue, and that's going to make you more metabolically active long run, because that brown adipose tissue is meant for thermogenesis. It's actually brown because it's so mitochondrial dense. And most of it's right here around your collarbone and scapula. You only have about 6 ounces of it on your body. It's a very unique fat. And we used to think that it was just on mice, or we didn't know that it had much purpose. And then we found out that babies use it for like that first 6 to 9 months because they lack the ability to shiver, and shivering creates thermogenesis. So they use the brown adipose tissue to get warmth until they have the ability to shiver. And we're now finding that people that seem to have the ability to eat a fair amount and not put on weight, this could be the difference, is that they have more brown adipose tissue and more active brown adipose tissue.
Is there a way to grow it or make it more active? Are there things that you can do? This is a lead-in question because I know the answer.
Yes, there is. And obviously, like we were just talking about, cold plunges are going to be great. And even better is if you create the bigger delta, which is going to be contrasting, where you're going from hot to freezing cold. That's even better. But I'll tell you, even if this seems hard, like to go really cold, ice bath, all that kind of stuff, there's data to show that just 60-degree temperatures, we're not talking super cold, we're just talking cool. 60-degree temperatures will still upregulate to some degree, not to the same degree, but will still upregulate brown adipose tissue. So if you can at least do cool showers or swim in a cool pool, that's going to be great for your brown adipose tissue.
What I love to do, Shawn, is do a resistance training, and my favorite one is tire flips. So I've got a big tractor tire, 200-pound tractor tire. I'll flip. Doesn't take long, very quick workout, 10 to 15 minutes, I'm done to exhaustion. And then I pop into my infrared sauna in the 130s, and I'll stay in there for like a 20-minute session. And then from the infrared sauna right to an ice bath. And you want to talk about making your body kind of go, what are we doing? But it's cool because within a few minutes, I'm in such a melancholy state. And when I get out of that ice bath, you're cool to the touch, but you're just like, you feel like you're floating. Well, you just had a session not long ago. It is the most transcendent kind of experience, like you almost meditated, and it was like a physiological meditation rather than a mental one.
Very much. That's a really great point too about a lot of these hormetic stresses. Is what makes a resilient body is going to make a resilient mind, and vice versa. It's been shown that the more resilience you have in your body, the more hormetic stress capacity you have in your body, the more that you have in your brain. So meaning, if I'm better at doing cold showers, I'm better at doing hot saunas, I'm better at intermittent or extended fasting, I'm better at keto, I'm better at high intensity interval training, I'm also better at dealing with stress at work, stress from relationships, stress from life,
Yes.
and vice versa. And they found that too. People that are mentally resilient, that are great reframers, they also end up being better at the hormetic stresses physiologically. So this is where the two are very intertwined, and it's a great that you point out that like when you go into these cold plunges or hot saunas, that you can actually find your inner peace, and
Yes.
you can get more resilient mentally in that state as you find your zen.
I mean, I think about all the people that talk about how they're so stressed in their life, and they have the stress to the point that it affects their sleep. And we're going to get into that in a second. And then it affects their energy the next day, and then they feel like crap because they're pushing towards insulin resistance because of the bad sleep from the bad stress that you can't resolve it's all tied, guys. I hope you're seeing that. And he puts the pieces all together in this book. Please get this book, because again, I think it brilliantly outlines, and I never even noticed till you said this, how you started hard, like really hardcore kind of sciencey and kind of these things need to be done, and then you're like, you were getting towards the things you should be doing. It's very well done, is what I'm saying. So let's get into sleep, because this is one that people struggle with. And a lot of times it's not the comfortable environment, what you were talking about earlier. They're not getting a cold enough temperature, which I crank my air down. Even when in the winter, if it's not cold enough, I'll crank it down to make sure it's 65 in there, which is going to lower the core metabolic rate temperature in my body. I wear the Oura ring, so I know exactly what my body temp's doing during the night. But there's still some people, they have trouble. And I think it has to do with not adequately dealing with the stress. So you talk about in here, and I want you to expand upon it here, the cortisol melatonin relationship, because when cortisol's high, you can't expect to sleep well because melatonin is, for lack of a better word, effed.
Have you guys tried the Paleo Valley beef sticks? These beef sticks are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. And many of the grass-fed beef sticks on the market today are actually finished with grains. They use beef sourced from small domestic farms in the United States. They only use real organic spices to flavor the beef sticks versus all the conventional spices sprayed with pesticides and other natural flavors from GMO. They also ferment the sticks, which creates naturally occurring probiotics, all great for your gut health. And best of all, they taste amazing. Again, they're Paleo Valley, my favorite beef stick on the market today. Go check them out, you guys. PaleoValley.com. Use the coupon code Jimmy at checkout for 15% off your first order. Paleo Valley beef sticks.
100%. So, there's several things that you mentioned there. So, certainly cortisol is problematic, as well as elevated epinephrine, all these corticosteroids, etc. Like, because we're too stressed, because that bucket is too small.
Yes.
And we have very little stress capacity. So when we're overwhelmed at work, when we're distracted from social media, when we go a couple hours without eating and we say my blood sugar is crashing, all of this stuff, when our team loses in sports, like, it's just too much. We're overwhelmed because that bucket is so small, because we're not doing all these biohacks. We're not doing extended fasting. We're not doing cold plunges. We're not getting enough sleep. And so those things are very important, that these stress hormones are staying elevated, and then it's affecting our quality of sleep, and it begets itself. One thing that happens too, Jimmy, is like when you don't get enough sleep, you actually become acutely insulin resistant in the brain.
Yeah.
And we know that Alzheimer's is actually considered type 3 diabetes. So This is like when you're not getting enough sleep, it's essentially acute Alzheimer's. And that's why you wake up with that brain fog. Your synapses are actually firing slower. And so what's our solution to that brain fog and lack of cellular energy, called brain energy gap? It's going to be caffeine. It's going to be sugar. It's going to be these things because I just need to get going. I'm so exhausted. And then you also run into decision fatigue because you're tired. And so you're not going to make the smarter, healthier decisions because you're exhausted. So now you're going to, I'll skip the gym tomorrow. I'll eat cleaner tomorrow. I'll hang out with my friends tomorrow. I'm just going to Netflix and chill and drink some alcohol and have pizza.
Yeah.
And that's because you didn't get enough sleep.
Well, and I feel bad for like shift workers. I mean, there's many studies out there about shift work really impacting your health negatively.
30% shorter lives.
What's that?
30% shorter lives.
And it kills me because there's good people, and we need people like in the medical field. There needs to be overnight medical people, but I feel for those people because they're usually working 3, 4, 5 nights a week like that, with a couple nights off and long hours when they are working. So they're exhausted when they get off, and then they're trying to sleep when the sun is bright in the sky. And it's like the body's like, no. We need to get you on a circadian rhythm. And then I remember Dr. John Lemansky, I used to do a podcast with him. He used to do the overnight ER doc thing for 10 years. And he's 15 years removed from that, and he's still struggling with some of the effects of that. So I don't know how you mitigate that because those people
I've had some people ask me about this specific thing.
Yeah.
I would try and reverse as much as I can that circadian rhythm cues. So what I would do at night, if I was to go in for work at night, I would use a blue light device. You can get a Philips Go light that actually fits on your desk, or you can get these human chargers that go in your ears.
Yes.
Because what's really cool is right here you have these photoreceptors that are for blue light and that turn on your circadian rhythm. And interestingly, right here, and I believe this is an evolutionary thing, that if you're maybe stabbed in your eye, that you also have photoreceptors here in your ear.
Wow.
And so these human chargers have like concentrated blue light that actually go in your ear like headphones. But you can also have these blue light devices, and you want to make sure it's more to the corners because that's where these receptors are. And you can turn on wakefulness, you can block melatonin. So that's what I would do if I was like just waking up and I was about to go into work for the evening. That's what I would do. And then at the end, like when I'm coming back home and there's sunlight and there's lights on in the house or whatever, like I would be wearing sunglasses, blue light blocking glasses, these kinds of things, and trying to do the best I can from that front. And then eating accordingly, like trying to eat during that night window and not eat during that daylight window. I'm trying to flip these things as best I can.
Yes, mimic day being night, night being day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a friend that's in the medical profession, and she works as an overnight nurse in a medical facility, and yes, she's struggling. And she said, I got any tips? So I was asking that for her. So thank you for your response. All right, so let's go to the growth part of energy. We're working our way down the acronym energy. And in this one, everybody and their mama sells CBD now. Like if you don't know about CBD, then you're asleep, because everybody and their mama, there's stores everywhere. I remember when I first interviewed somebody, this has been a decade plus ago, that was talking about the cannabidiol and the cannabinoid pathways in the body, and that it helps with pain receptors and all these other things. I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool. But I didn't think anything of it. And then suddenly CBD. But the problem is all CBDs aren't created equal. So how do people kind of cut through the marketing and find what's actually going to help them for why they're using it? Yeah,
that's a great question. But like a prelude to that, before we get into the cannabinoids, is how amazing the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, is.
Yeah.
Look, we have people that are experts on the nervous system, the circulatory system, all these different systems in the body, digestive system, but no one practically knows anything scientifically about the endocannabinoid system. And it's known as the master regulatory system. It controls pain, inflammation, mood, and so many disease states are correlated to this ECS and deficiencies therein. And it's so frustrating that we're not talking about it, that there's not anything addressing it, because the way to fix these deficiencies is with these naturally occurring cannabinoids. And so, yes, we see like CBD, but there's actually hundreds of them. There's CBD, CBG, CBN. There's things like anandamide. Some of these things occur naturally, yes, in hemp, but like anandamide could be in chocolate and some other things. And so these compounds can fill in deficiencies in this ECS. And then what we see is pain problems improve, nerves pain improve, like neuropathy. We see mood and depression improve. And so this is an inflammation improve. So these are pretty dramatic effects we're seeing from CBD, CBG, and some of these other compounds. It's tough to say like which one to use. For me, here's where I struggle. There's full spectrum, there's broad spectrum, these naturally occurring CBDs.
Right.
The problem is you'll see it'll be hemp oil, 30 milligrams. 30 milligrams of hemp oil is nothing.
Nothing.
You need it standardized to CBD, cannabidiol, and if it's 30 milligrams of cannabidiol, great, we're talking about something.
Yeah.
But this is why, so the broad spectrum or full spectrum, those have other cannabinoids, those have these terpenes and flavonoids and all these things that have an entourage effect that actually help the bioavailability, which is great. But because there's not much standardization on all of those things, it's very difficult for me to recommend which one's actually going to work for you. Right. This is why in the book I talk about the isolate, the CBD isolate, or the synthetic CBD.
Yes.
It's not going to be as strong if I had the same dose of CBD with all of these other things.
Yes.
But it's predictable and I know what it is. And that's my frustration with a lot of the CBD that's out there, is you just don't know what you're getting, what it is, and how it's going to differ from lot to lot, batch to batch.
Well, and we knew this was going to happen because it's happened in the supplement industry. You've been heavy in that industry for a very long time, helping to formulate quality ones, but there's shit ones out there. Let's just be honest. There's some really crap supplements. So why would we think they wouldn't water down the CBD with hemp oil and then call it CBD and people get fooled?
It's so frustrating. Stuff like that is so frustrating to me, Jimmy, because like people say supplements don't work, and I'm like, tell me what supplements you're taking.
Right.
You know, how much are you spending on these supplements? What research are you doing on these supplements? Because unfortunately, there is a lot of garbage supplements out there.
Slickly marketed garbage supplements, yes. Buyer beware, guys. Trust people like Shawn here because he knows his stuff. So one more letter in energy as the last one, your tribe. And it is my favorite one as well, cultivating deep and meaningful connections. And I want to kind of camp out here before we have to go. Why is it so hard to develop meaningful connections? Like I said, you had this beautiful experience recently with friends. You were celebrating Stephanie's birthday, right? So yeah. It's beautiful. But people that have, is it because they lack the ability to be vulnerable with other people because it sets them up as a target potentially for criticism, which I think is a bogus reason not to cultivate deep relationships with people? Be vulnerable, they'll be vulnerable back, and it begets that. And you just, I've got 3 friends in my life that I can be super open and vulnerable and talk about anything. And I value that so much. I never valued it in my life until the last 2 years. And it became like, it's like breathing to me. I can't live without it.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And what you're talking about is the ego in particular. And the ego does protect, but it also prevents.
Yes.
And it does keep us from getting harmed in a lot of different ways. And we get to rewrite the story with the ego. We can say, "Oh, that person was going to screw me over. I don't trust that person. They're no good anyway. Like, I should have what they have." That's all that ego stuff. And what happens is when that goes back to the default mode network. And when neurologically you can get into a state where you can suppress the ego in the default mode network, which again actually gets back to psychedelics and plant medicine. This is probably the primary way they work, is one, suppressing that default mode network, and then two, increasing neuroplasticity with BDNF. That's where you get to rewrite everything. That's where you turn off all this bullshit that's going on in your head with, they're going to screw me over. Like, I got screwed over before. Every person's going to screw me over. This stuff keeps you safe, but it also keeps you from a better life.
Yeah.
So that's where it's important to challenge yourself. We're all again, going back to survival, it's called xenophobia, where we don't trust ones that look different or act different from us. And this is where racism, sexism, all these things come from. They're not terrible behaviors. They're actually built-in survival behaviors in and of themselves. Obviously, some of the things that can come out of them can be terrible. But there's a reason that we think that way. There's a reason that almost everyone has racist thoughts, has narrow-minded thoughts. Doesn't make you necessarily a racist. You just have these thoughts because they're meant to protect you, saying, they're different from me, I'm scared. What is really needed, though, is for you to hormetically stress your being by being around people that are different from you, different religions, different genders, different orientations, different people from all over the world, different languages, different cultures. We all can be narrow-minded if we're not exposing ourselves constantly to very different stimuli.
Dude, that's the last 2 years of my life. I purposely put myself in front of people and ideas that I never did before. And it wasn't like I was conscientiously saying, I refuse to budge off of what I believed. No, just what I believed was what I believed, and who I was around was who I was around. It never dawned on me, hey, push the boundary. You might learn something new about the world and about yourself. Like, I have learned so many things that I didn't know within the last 2 years, Shawn, that I didn't know the first 47 years of my life. The last 2 years, I feel like my jump in meaningful relationships, my jump in knowledge and experience and understanding and having empathy for other people has expanded probably more than it did the first 47 years of my life, because I'm being active and proactive about trying to push that boundary of, all right, this is uncomfortable, but I want to feel this. I want to learn from this. And I'm a better human because of it.
So you bring up some really good points there. There's a couple scientific ideas. One, we mentioned having crystallized intelligence and our box getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we age. And again, that serves to protect us because we get faster and faster and faster at things that we're doing consistently. We're rooting in these habits, these behaviors, and that can be healthy and it can also be counterproductive.
Right.
But one of the other things that you're talking about is confirmation bias, where we're chronically exposing ourselves to the same thing, smaller and smaller group, and then we're saying everyone thinks this way.
Yeah.
When we're on Facebook, all of our friends think the same way we think.
Right.
When we're watching Fox News, if you're a Republican, or MSNBC, if you're a liberal, and you're like, everyone thinks how I think, and this is horrible how the other people think. One of the other dangerous things that's happening right now, and this is opening a whole other box, we could do a whole other show literally on this idea, Jimmy, is binary thinking. It's the most dangerous way of thinking. It's more dangerous than any opinion someone has on any issue. And this is a way of controlling people. If everyone thinks the same way, we all agree, that's great, that's one opinion. If people think a lot of different ways, that's great. We're going to have discussion. And there's a lot of places that people are coming from. But if they can tell us that people only think 2 ways, now that's a problem. And now you're going to be dismissive and put someone in their little box and get rid of them because they don't think like you. They think the bad way. And this is so counterproductive to what we're talking about, to being exposed to new things and stimuli and having a growth mindset and living a longer life. You're going to stress yourself out. You're going to be initiating fear. You're going to lower your immune system, increase cortisol, epinephrine. This binary thinking is very dangerous. And to me, it's almost Naziistic. And it's really the way that the media is being run right now.
Again, we could do a whole episode just on that concept. Cancel culture is kind of a manifestation of what you're talking about. So, yeah, maybe we'll have you back to talk about that. But right now, you're pimping a book. It's called The Energy Formula. Go get it, you guys. What you made a website for it, right? Energybook.com or Energy Formula?
Energyformula.com.
Okay.
And I have like a ton of extras on there. There's a recipe guide. There's a fasting for energy book. There's a hidden chapter on natural movement. There's multiple Q&As. There's all this free stuff there. You can listen to the first 2 chapters on Audible with my voice. You can read the first 2 chapters on that site, energyformula.com. And it has all the links that you need to get it from anywhere you want to get it. So, yeah.
By the way, did you listen back to the whole book? I listened back to the whole Keto Clarity. I would hear, oh, what happened there?
I did. It's hard. It's hard listening to yourself and not being hypercritical. But I've gotten tons and tons and tons of good feedback on it. So I'm going with that. You know,
well, you've got a great voice for audiobook, and anybody that speaks well. So I can ask Alexa over there to play anything in my Audible library. And so if you haven't done that, it's really cool to hear it through your devices. So, all right, guys, go check him out, Shawn Wells, over on Instagram. And Shawn, thank you so much for being here today, man.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Jimmy. I always enjoy being with you, and it's great to be on with a fellow Dallas Cowboys fan. So have a great day. I appreciate you so much and the information you're putting out there.
Having a hard time reaching my goal weight.
Just use Keto Chow, the magical meal replacement that makes keto easy. Prep takes seconds. Just add the fat you want, Keto Chow, water, and shake. And before you know it, you'll be getting rid of the fat you don't want.
I did it.
I can't believe you're finally here. Oh, I thought you'd be taller.
I know, and I'm wearing heels.
Grab yours today at jimmylovesketochow.com.